Hello, everyone. It's Matt Schlapp, and welcome to a very special episode of America UnCanceled. Special for two reasons. Number one, what a great holiday season we're in, an important time to be with your family and to get refreshed. And the second reason is someone who's been a real hero is joining us on today's show. Brandon Struck, the founder of the Walkaway campaign, someone who's been a close friend and ally of CPAC and of Mercy and myself. Brandon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you're a hero in a lot of ways. Number one, you're a hero just because you have your own ideas and you're not ashamed to follow them. You don't get bullied very easily. But there's another very compelling reason, and that is you have been a victim of this lawfare, this use of the legal process to try to shut people down, destroy them, shame them, defame them, destroy their lives. And you just had a huge victory, which you and I were able to talk about over text, and then I saw it on Twitter. Brandon Struck fought back. Tell us about it.
Well, so, a lot of people know that I ended up getting FBI raided and arrested and thrown in jail because I stood outside of the Capitol building on January 6th for 8 minutes, never entered the building, didn't engage in any violence, didn't even witness any violence or any rioting. But the FBI threw me in jail. I went through a whole criminal case that literally took about a year and a half to get through. But about 10 months after I was arrested by the FBI in a criminal case, I ended up getting served in a civil lawsuit by a Soros-funded nonprofit law firm out of Washington, D.C. called Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Now, this is one of those law firms that has a long history of engaging in lawfare to try to damage the names and reputations of conservatives and to try to, of course, hit us in our pocketbooks and bankrupt people. And so what they did was they created this case called Smith versus Trump, where they sued Donald Trump, a number of other people, and myself under the KKK Act. And in this case, they went out, I'm alleging, they went out and found 8 Capitol police officers who are black and brown to represent as the plaintiffs, and essentially created a story that said that I was a part of a group of people involved in a conspiracy to try to do harm to black and brown officers on January 6th, deprive them of their civil rights, and commit assault and battery against them. Now, this is so preposterous for so many reasons, but one of the main glaring ones is I was investigated for a year by the FBI, the DOJ, the January 6th committee. And after all of that, I was never even accused of committing an act of violence or conspiring to commit an act of violence. So they initially came at me with 6 counts, and it took us about a year and a half for the judge to dismiss 4 of the 6 counts. But the judge actually kept me in the case on 2 possible counts, that being assault and one of them being battery. So we had to enter discovery in this case. And once we entered discovery, we were finally able to begin fighting back and asking these 8 Capitol police officers who, by the way, I've never met in my entire life. They weren't, I didn't see them on January 6th. I didn't encounter them on January 6th. But finally, through the legal process, we were able to start asking them questions. Where were you on January 6th? What was going on? Through the process of discovery, we learned things like one of the officers accusing me of assault and battery was in Maryland at the time that I was at the Capitol. None of the plaintiffs in this case were even working on the same side of the building that I was on. And so it was a long and arduous process. This has been going on for nearly 2.5 years. It's cost me $150,000 to defend myself. But finally, all counts against me have been dismissed, and I've prevailed in this case.
So did it start off as like a concern that the FBI, through their raid and taking of your information and stuff, that it was, did you worry about a criminal probe in the beginning, some kind of criminal indictment? And did it shift to a civil matter?
Oh, no, I faced both. So I went through a criminal case with January 6th. So again, I never entered the building, no violence, no vandalism, no destruction. But because of who I am, and this is not even my opinion, the DOJ and the FBI were very explicit about this. They said, this guy, Brandon Struck, is the founder of this walkaway movement. He has over 1 million people following him. He does these events that people are showing up to. He's got a lot of influence, and therefore he needs to be taught a very specific lesson of deterrence about, going to the Capitol and encouraging people on January 6th. So they charged me with felonies for being on Capitol grounds. I literally got a trespassing felony for standing outside of the Capitol. And then they also charged me with almost like an incitement felony, essentially saying that because I was there, my presence was encouraging the crowd to attack officers and things like that. So I ended up pleading guilty to a misdemeanor. They dropped the felony charges. I took a plea deal and I pled guilty to a disorderly conduct misdemeanor. But through the course of going through this, a lot of people in D.C. who hate Republicans, hate conservatives, hate Trump supporters, got a lot of bright ideas about how to maximize the damage in this situation. So, they've already got me in their crosshairs. So they thought, oh, let's pile on a civil case on top of this, alleging anything under the sun. I mean, the idea that I conspired with Donald Trump and a couple dozen other people to go beat up black police officers on January 6th is so outlandish. But it's like in the world of DC courts, anything goes.
Now, like a misdemeanor's, obviously, this is like a no big deal thing, but disorderly conduct, you didn't do anything disorderly. It just shows you the absurdity of this system where they pressure you.
Well, that's right. And in my particular case, my quote unquote disorderliness was words. So the government wrote a 30-page sentencing recommendation on my Class B misdemeanor. And the majority of this 30-page sentencing recommendation was tweets that I had written over the course of 3, 4, 5 months. And I'm not talking about tweets saying, let's go storm the Capitol and burn the place to the ground. I'm saying tweets like, we've got to stand up and rise up. We can't allow certification to be transferred to Biden until we know what happened in this election. Things like that. And also comments that I made First Amendment protected speech at different rallies that I had gone to. But my disorderliness was all speech. It was all First Amendment protected speech. But they said, these words that I said incited the crowd to become upset and do what they did on January 6th. So that was my disorderliness.
And, we've seen these clips that have been going around television of Democratic lawmakers, including Chuck Schumer, it seems like verbally assaulting, but certainly very harsh language on people like Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett and others. Many of those people have faced personal violence. They have security details. Why is the First Amendment like a one-way ratchet? It is something that a Democratic elected official can use to the full panoply. They can say there was Russian collusion. Adam Schiff can go in front of cameras over and over again and say he's seen the proof of the Russian collusion, even though no one at the woke DOJ could find one scrap of evidence. So it works for the left, but if you're on the right, if you're someone like you or me or the people who watch our show or participate in CPAC or walk away, all of a sudden, if you have a political idea that you express, you could be in harm's way.
Well, and they intentionally assign the worst possible interpretation of any words that we ever use. There are certain phrases that any of us use that's pretty common political speech. Stand up, fight for your rights, fight back. But when we say things like stand up and fight back, fight for your country, they're intentionally interpreting these words to say, oh, this is a call to violence. This is a call to insurrection. But they use those exact same words all the time. And it's like, well, that's not what we meant. We were encouraging BLM to stand up for racial justice. We're encouraging, Antifa people to fight back against fascism. So when they do these exact same things, which with much more catastrophic results, I mean, like actual violence being committed, people being killed, businesses being burned to the ground, it's First Amendment protected speech. But when we do it, it's some sort of call to violence, and we need to be rounded up and thrown in jail for it. So I don't know, and I truly don't know. I think that there are some people who have just on the left who have no self-awareness, and it's like they just see us as bad people, and so they see everything we do as bad, and they literally don't get that they do the exact same thing, and in many cases much, much worse. And then I think there are people who know exactly what they're doing, and they're enjoying this weaponization, and that there's a double standard that can be used to pound their enemies over the head while they get off scot-free for anything that they do.
Have you thought about taking some additional legal steps, more aggressive against some of these people? I mean, if an officer sues you and says you know, are guilty of assault and battery or some kind of mistreatment on January 6th, and they're not even there, but yet they implied to the courts they were, couldn't you take some actions back at people, or is that something that your legal advisors have cautioned you against?
I will say that I've been cautioned against it for a number of different reasons.
Money is one, right? It's expensive.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for saying that, because that's something that I think people don't think about. When you're egregiously wronged and somebody lies about you and smears your name and smears your reputation, the first thing people go to is sue. You've got to sue. But they never consider to sue someone.
Yes.
You're looking at a minimum of $50,000 just to get it off the ground. And it is very difficult to win a defamation lawsuit. It is very difficult to win when somebody's wronged you. It's not that easy to win. So you have to kind of, ask yourself, is it worth going down this road? Because you may end up, severely suffering financially, and you're probably not going to win. But the other thing to bear in mind, Matt, is after January 6th, I have to really pick my battles. I have been defamed hundreds of times at minimum. And I have filed now lawsuits against MSNBC, against a number of different media outlets. I'm also about to file a new lawsuit in the next week or two against a group of individuals who have been maligning me and slandering me. More to come on that in the coming weeks. But I can't sue every person. I mean, it would cost millions and millions and millions of dollars for me to go after every person who has harmed me since January 6th. So I have to pick my battles.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I do think we pulled together with a bunch of our supporters at CPAC not long in close association when you had your latest walkaway event, which was spectacular, by the way. And thank you for inviting us. It was really uplifting. But I think one of the things we have to figure out, Brandon, is how do we help each other, and how do we raise the money needed to make sure that we can make this lawfare stop. And it won't stop if we just win in court when they come after us, which is a really important thing to win in court. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you should feel ecstatic at the result of what you've been through, because it takes a lot of courage to persevere through that. And, they try every which way to kind of cross pressure you to get you to buckle. So that's a big deal. But the second piece of this is, it's kind of interesting. There's not a Joe Biden cabinet secretary that's in any kind of ethical cloud. Even Mayorkas, who's opened up the border, there's no kind of ethics against him. There's no real lawsuits against him. I don't even think there's an impeachment investigation against him. So, you've worked for Trump like Mercy did. There was dozens, maybe hundreds of investigations and front page news stories trying to attack people, either Trump or people who were associated with Trump. When the Democrats get into office, Republicans just don't lay a finger on them. And it seems like this is asymmetrical warfare, and we can't survive this kind of two standards of justice. DOJ goes after only Republicans, or maybe one Senator Bob Menendez, who is clearly so crooked that they have to keep going after him, but like nobody else. Do you think I have this right? Do you think our supporters have this right? We've got to figure out how to raise the money to go after them, and then maybe we can get to some fairness again.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you said that, because this has been a really frustrating thing for me as somebody who used to be on the left, and now I've been a conservative for 7-8 years, and obviously there's kind of an acclimation period where you kind of figure out how conservatives do things differently than liberals. But
Brandon, can I just remind you that if you become a leftist, you get to go to the greatest cocktail parties. You probably get an Emmy or an Academy Award or something else. When you join our leagues, you get indicted,
you go to jail,
and fired.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. But to me, it's very frustrating because there's a lack of aggressiveness on the conservative side of the aisle. And I don't like it. I understand, because I think our side of the aisle is much more Christian, much more faith-based. And I get it. There's this belief that, let God handle things, and just, be a good person. Don't do what they do. I got to tell you, that's not my position, especially after what I've been through. If it were up to me,
the
I
real
think
difference, if I could just say on the Christian piece, which is, I don't want to go after innocent people on their side, but I do want to hold people accountable on their side who are corruptly lying to destroy people on the right. And so maybe for those folks who believe that their faith tells them they should, have the golden rule and treat people well, I agree with that. But we also have to defend people. We have to defend each other against these terrible attacks.
Yeah, and I think it's people also need to realize, and I'm going to explain what I'm about to say because it's part of what got me in trouble with January 6th. After the election of 2020 on Twitter, I made the comment, make your peace right now with the fact that we're in a civil war. I said we didn't want it, and we didn't start it, and we didn't ask for it, but it's here. And of course, the DOJ said, he said we're in a civil war, and well, we are. And, a civil war today a civil war today isn't about grabbing your musket and going out and shooting people in the battlefield. A civil war today is about depriving people of the right to send and receive money, to have a bank account, to exist in the digital square online. It's using the media to slander and malign people and accuse them of things that they didn't do and destroy their reputations. And we're getting slaughtered. We're getting slaughtered because we're always turning the other cheek. We're always taking the high road. And it's never going to stop if we don't start meeting them on this digital battlefield and legal battlefields where they're coming at us. I mean, we've got to fight fire with fire. That's where I am with this.
I can't agree with you more, Brandon, and we really appreciate you hanging in there. You've given us all great hope. I think people realize, once again, I talk about the people that help us at our nonprofit. A lot of donors are scared. They're scared to give money because they believe the Biden administration will audit them, will investigate them, will go after them. They're scared when they listen to the speeches of these radicalized Democrats on the floor of the House and the Senate. The Democratic Party has embraced this idea of destroying people. It's not a political disagreement anymore. It's about destruction of your opponent. So, if you want to call that a civil war, Marjorie Taylor Greene has talked about kind of a great divorce. I hate all those terms. I'll be honest with you, Brandon. I hate hearing those terms, but they still might be accurate, even though we hate hearing them. It might not be a hot war, might be a cold war, but there's definitely a war going on. And the way we're going to bring it all back is if we help each other, defend each other, and make them feel a little bit of the heat themselves. And so I just want to thank you very much for giving us the update, for hanging in there. Let me ask you a final question. When you win in court, do you feel like elation and you're so happy and you want to just like go party? Or is it more like you win, but you still feel like you lost because it was so painful? What was the emotional roller coaster like at the end?
Well, okay, so yes, the initial reaction, when my lawyer called me and said, it's over, we won. I had almost a euphoric sensation, and I was elated. I was truly elated. And that lasted a few days, I would say. And then this really weird thing happened that may be hard for people to understand. In a way, I almost feel more exhausted and deflated now than I felt when I was going through the case. And I had to really think about that over the last week. I'm like, why do I feel this way? And what I realized is I've been existing in survival mode for 2.5 years. Just survive, not joy, not happiness, not I'm thrilled to be like literally, how do I survive? Day-to-day survival. And then the moment that it ended and I was able to kind of step away from survival mode, I just felt depleted.
Yeah.
And I think in time, I'm going to feel like I've gotten my life back, but I think that there's a little bit of an adjustment period. And right now I'm going through that.
Well, you're in our prayers. We praise you once again for your bravery and for your fortitude. We are sorry that so many of you and your fellow citizens have been wrapped up in this canard associated with J6. The only good news is I think people are figuring it out. And I
Yeah.
think the tide is turning. And I think politically that's happening as well. So, Brandon, let's get out there and save our country.
Always. I'm in this fight. Next year's a big year. I'm not backing down. None of this has killed my desire to stand up for America, save our country, get as many people as I can to walk away. The time is now. I'm in this fight until the very end.
Brandon Struck, thanks for joining us on America Uncanceled. And thanks to all of you who continue to listen to our conversations and our interviews. And please go to our website at cpac.org and get all signed up for CPAC, where you will get to see Brandon, you will get to see me, and more importantly, you will get to see Mercy and President Trump and so many other people who will be announcing in the days and weeks to come. And we hope to talk to you again soon. And Merry Christmas.